No! I am way too unstable for that bullshit. Stop all the goddamn movement. Everybody stop moving.
We can't let y'all go, but look, the shit'll get worked out in court.
We got our rights.
Why don't you exercise your right to shut the fuck up?
I'm all right, I'm just gonna give you a warning, okay? That's the best I can fucking do for all of yous.
Mike and Marcus are back, and the bad boys are badder than ever as they take on the Cuban cartel. This week, special guest Aaron Neuman joins us to discuss unrealistic tunnel digging, dads that intimidate their daughters' dates, and how powerful C4 explosive really is. Then we find out if Bad Boys 2 stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Welcome to the Test of Time. I'm James Brief, and with me once again for the nearly 200th time, we're almost there, folks, is Alan Noah.
186 to be precise. Hello, I am Alan Noah, and joining us once again in the studio is Aaron Neuman. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
So, I mentioned this last week. The reason we invited you on to do the Bad Boys movies, Aaron, is because you loved Bad Boys 2. Every time I came over to your apartment, what was on TV? Bad Boys 2. Would you say that's accurate?
It's pretty fair to say. I think I had it running a lot. And I don't know if this was on a constant on TBS or USA or whatever the hell it was, but I definitely owned the DVD. We were running that all the time.
Do you still have the DVD?
I don't own any more DVDs, but I do own it on digital.
Okay, very good. So we clearly got the right guest here for these movies.
And we also got a guest on a very special episode of the Test of Time. This is when Al and I predict what the top three box office earners are going to be for the year 2020, as well as review last year's picks of what we did in 2019. Aaron, do you know what film made the most money last year in 2019?
I believe it's Avengers Endgame.
You're absolutely correct. Avengers Endgame was not only the number one film of 2019, but Alan,
also the number one grossing film of all time.
That's right. And also the number one film where Loki's in a film.
That is correct. Yeah.
Number one film of all time with the time traveling Captain America too.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And last year, there was a little bit of contention because there was the end of what's known as the Infinity Saga and then the end of the what's now known as the Skywalker Saga. So basically, we were in a little tussle of who's going to be number one, Rise of Skywalker or Endgame. Who do you think picked Star Wars? Who do you think had the faith that Star Wars is never going to let him down?
I'm pretty sure Al was heartbroken when he found out the gross record here.
I just have to interject. We did not tussle, and I was not heartbroken. I think you guys have way more stock in this than I do.
We know that you're a diehard Star Wars fan and truly believe in the franchise with all your heart.
Which is why Al said number one would be Rise of Skywalker, but I said Avengers Endgame. And I believe I said there was not even a chance it wasn't going to be number one, and this wouldn't even be close.
Honestly, I'm happy that you got that right, because this clearly means so much to you. I'm glad that you have this. I'm glad that you were right. Also, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker made over $1 billion.
Oh, it did, but it is on a trajectory to do a lot worse than either Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. So we both differed for our number ones. I will admit, I said Star Wars was going to be number two, and you said Avengers would be number two. And we're both kind of wrong because technically Star Wars Episode 9, we don't know the final numbers, but I don't think it's going to reach the top three. And then we had different number threes. These were two excellent guesses because they were right behind each other. So there were three films that we were discussing for the third spot, which was basically which is going to make the most money from the Walt Disney Corporation. Is it going to be The Lion King? Is it going to be Toy Story 4 or is it going to be Aladdin? And I'll tell you, we both correctly predicted it was not going to be Aladdin.
Right.
Aladdin was the third of these, but did fantastic. And you picked Toy Story 4 and I picked The Lion King. And technically, Al is correct that Toy Story 4 was number 3 of the year. But Lion King was number 2 of the year. Mm-hmm. So we both had 2 of the top 3 in our top 3, different orders. I had number 1 and number 2. You had number 1 and number 3. But we had them in the wrong orders. We didn't guess correctly. You guessed number 3 correctly at 3, but you guessed number 1 incorrectly at 2.
Let's just say you won.
You know what? I'm fine with that.
Of course.
But I will say also, I asked you one other question. I said, name either what you think is going to be a big flop or what you think is going to be a big success. I was pretty proud of myself. I said that Joker might be huge. I said Joker or Detective Pikachu might be huge. And Detective Pikachu made a lot of money. But Joker was, of course, it's the number 1 R-rated film of all time. Do you remember what you said was going to be a kind of a flop?
Yeah, I said Godzilla. I forget what the subtitle was. King of Monsters or
King
something?
of the Monsters. Yeah, it made $110 million, but it wasn't a flop. It was not Cats or something like that. But so now let's get to 2020. This is really hard. There's no immediate front runner. I mean,
I'm trying to think of what's on the horizon here in 2020 that's really going to be the next blockbuster. What do we see for the, July 4th weekend?
4th of July weekend, Aaron, is a movie with Ryan Reynolds called Free Guy and Minions: The Rise of Gru.
Yeah, Free Guy. I didn't see the trailer, but it's about, you know what an NPC is, Al?
A non-player character?
Right. So it basically one of those background characters in Grand Theft Auto that's not really the main guy you're playing. And Ryan Reynolds plays as one of the, it's sort of like the Lego movie in a way. He plays as an NPC, I think. That's all I know. And now he's like a free guy.
The following week, July 10th, is Ghostbusters: Afterlife, which could be big. Then you have the week after that, Tenet by Christopher Nolan. I predict a big year, obviously, for the Disney company, which is not surprising because they own everything. That's not much of a prediction. But I think we're going to have a big year for female superheroes. And by that, I mean Mulan, Black Widow, and not a Disney movie, Wonder Woman 1984. I think that's going to be really big. We're also getting a new Bond, No Time to Die, the 25th installment in the Bond franchise, and the last with Daniel Craig. I can imagine that will do pretty well. Do I have to name 1, 2, 3? That's the rules.
We'll do it one at a time. Name your number 1.
I will go with Mulan for number 1.
Okay. That's my number 2.
Okay.
Because I think Mulan in the Chinese market is going to be gangbusters, and it's possible because of the Chinese market, Mulan might even be number 1 worldwide. I do not think Mulan will be number 1 in America. The number 1 movie that I think in the United States will be No Time to Die.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's going to be very well done, and I think people are going to be coming out for the last one. It's going to be a good film, I think, and then people are going to respond to it the way they responded to more Skyfall than Spectre.
I'm doing Fast and Furious 9.
That's definitely, one to put up there.
Fast and Furious 9 for sure. In terms of U.S. consumption of high speed chases, I think that's going to be the takeaway because I don't see something coming out otherwise that would take over it. I don't see Mulan. I don't see the Disney movies taking over that.
You want to throw a number 2 and 3 in there?
I could throw number 2 and 3. Yeah. I would throw number 2. I would put Scarlett Johansson in Black Widow as number 2. Unfortunately, I don't think that the DC movies with Gal Gadot being the next step for her, I don't see it really pulling in the numbers. I think everyone does enjoy it, but I don't think people react to DC as well today. For number 3, I would hope it would be Coming to America because I loved that movie, but realistically, it's going to be Top Gun.
Ooh, another.
You think so?
That was the number 1 film of 1987 or 1986 when it came out.
That's so long ago. I don't think people care.
Well, what do you think, Al? Number 2 and 3. I said my number 1 and 2.
For 2, I'm going to go with Onward. That's my weird, quirky choice. It's a Pixar movie. It looks really cool. It looks intriguing. I feel like Pixar is due for like a new IP movie that's going to blow it out of the water. And for 3, I'm going to say Doolittle with Robert Downey Jr. No, I'm not. I'm clearly kidding.
God,
I am
I thought
clearly
you were-
kidding. You got really excited when I said
Well, I
that.
got really excited because I was gonna have such a great opportunity to make fun of you time next year.
I was clearly kidding. Number 3, I don't know, man. Bill and Ted Face the Music, I'm excited for. That's not going to be number 3. Sonic the Hedgehog is going to be an epic bomb. I'm very confident about that. You know what? I'll say The Eternals. I think there's going to be a real desire to see that movie. It's got a huge ensemble cast. The Marvel movies always do well. Black Widow's coming out pretty early in the year, and then Eternals, I believe, is coming out in November. I think there's going to be a real appetite for that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to switch it. I'm going to say Eternals number 2 and Onward for number 3.
So my number 3 is I'm gonna go with agreeing with Aaron at Fast and Furious 9. I do think the franchise is going to go down, though. I think Fast and Furious 8 was more, people were curious, what are they going to do without Paul Walker?
Yeah.
But Hobbs and Shaw was a huge hit. I thought Hobbs and Shaw was not going to do as well as it did. I'll bet you that Fast and Furious 9 is actually going to do better internationally than it does US, but I just put it at number 3. You know what my wild card is? That might even be number 3.
What?
Dune.
No way.
Do you know this director?
Dennis DeVille.
Yes, exactly. I was hoping you would know how to say his name because I don't. He is the up-and-coming director of our time. Like, everyone's excited about everything he does.
Right. Everyone was really excited about Blade Runner 2049.
I told you that I did not believe that Blade Runner was as popular as people think it is.
Right. Same as Dune. There are people who really care about Dune, just like there are people who are obsessed with Blade Runner, but not that many.
The difference is that the story of Dune is amazing and a competent director with a big budget. Okay, that's my wild card. Do you want to throw a wild card out there?
I think No Time to Die is going to do well. I don't think it's going to be the number 1 of the year.
I don't think we have any gangbuster films this year. I don't think we have a $500 million film domestic this year.
When we were talking about the 4th of July weekend movies, Minions, The Rise of Gru, that will be huge. I'm not saying that's going to be a good movie. That movie's going to make a ton of money. Presumably also some money from me. I'm sure I will be taking the kids to see that.
Minions is a license to print money. They're just going to release those films until people stop. There's going to be Minions for the next decade.
Yeah, something to look forward to in this decade.
You know, so speaking of franchises and, films for this year, last week was the opening of Bad Boys for Life, the 3rd film in the Bad Boys franchise. And last week we reviewed the first film. And this week we're reviewing the sequel. So this film features the return of the Bad Boys Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett, played by Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. This time they investigate the flow of ecstasy into Miami, which is being orchestrated by a kingpin named Johnny Tapia. Meanwhile, Marcus's sister Sid is a DEA agent who's also working undercover to take down Tapia. And she's also secretly dating Mike, by the way. Ooh! Mm-hmm. And thanks to some Haitian gangsters that get in the way, the two investigations collide. And when I say collide, I mean they literally explode. There's explosions, gunfights, jokes about sex, every kind of Michael Bay thing you can imagine. And it's all leading up to a huge showdown between the bad guys and the bad boys at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Cuba.
This
movie had a much bigger budget than the first Bad Boys.
Yeah, 7 times the previous film's budget. Whereas last time it had just under $20 million. This time it had about $130 million budget. And this film opened 8 years after the first film. So it's not crazy that this third film is opening up almost 2 decades later.
You want to space out the Bad Boys movies. You don't want to overdo it, right?
No, and this was kind of a return to it, because you had mentioned in the first film that the first film was top billed for Martin Lawrence, not Bad Boys 2. Because in Bad Boys 1, we just knew a fresh-faced Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But then in 1996, the next year, comes Independence Day. 97 is MIB. Also in 97 is the album Big Willie Style. You remember any songs from that one, Aaron?
I Actually, I can't remember. Just the
Getting
big
jiggy
Willie
with it.
getting
Na
jiggy
na
with
na
it.
na
Yeah.
na na na. And then there's Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's
Welcome
also
to Miami.
right, and Men in Black. That was a huge song as well. And by 2001, Will Smith is a legitimate actor in that he has an Oscar nomination for his portrayal of Muhammad Ali. Men in Black 2, while not critically lauded, it made a ton of money. And he had a few misses here and there, Wild Wild West and Bagger Vance. But Will Smith, at the time of Bad Boys 2, he's the king of Hollywood. And this film takes place 8 years after the events of the first film, so pretty much in real time. And the first opening scene is in an ecstasy plant where you see these pharmaceutical presses that are pressing pills, and you see that they're being smuggled out into coffins, and the coffins are being dumped into the bay near Miami, and then scuba diving guys. I mean, this is really slick.
Seems like a really dumb idea to dump your very valuable drugs in the ocean. I mean, I get that they have like all the high-tech stuff to get the drugs out of the ocean. It just seems like very likely that a shark is going to eat some of your drugs. Like you have to you have to assume that, right?
A shark is gonna.
I
don't think
there's
those are
sharks.
bags. I don't think they're plastic bags. They're in steel coffins.
Or one's going to sink, or one of them the GPS tracker is going to break or something.
That
I
might
agree
happen.
that
That might
there were
happen.
too many points of failure for their method of tossing it over into the water where no one's even looking for it right then. It could have just been floating. I don't know why they went through the heavy levels of having it sit underwater for them to go with the GPS tracker, click the buoyancy balloon, and have it raised to the surface. That seemed a little bit over the top, but I loved it. The only part of the opening scene that I really thought was unbelievable was when, I don't know if you recall, when they're in the boat and the Coast Guard choppers are dispatched to go see them, and all of a sudden they just stop the boat, they call it the Go Fast boat, and they hit a button, and all of a sudden a black tarp goes over the guy standing in back, and then the helicopter just loses them because they put a black tarp over their heads.
I assume it was some kind of reflective black tarp that resembles ocean water at night.
In my mind, I'm like, so all these guys that are flying helicopters at night in the dark, I'm assuming they used infrared to see where they were going, but they couldn't see the boat on the whole ocean.
Well, you bring up an interesting point there, because when we get to like the good guys and their operation to stop the drugs coming into Miami, we have Henry Rollins in a cameo, which is almost a shame because Henry Rollins is awesome and they give him just like 3 lines in this whole movie. But he basically says, since 9/11, we're going real high tech in the war against drugs. And then to your point, Aaron, it doesn't seem like they're all that high tech. Then when we get to Mike and Marcus in the very next scene, they're using these radios that keep going on the fritz and don't work very well. It does not seem that they have gone very high tech in this war on drugs. Also, since 9/11, they went high tech in the war on drugs. Wasn't it that we went more high tech in the war on terrorism?
And also, I don't believe the war had started here, so I don't really know what 9/11. A lot of things. The police have gotten a lot more equipment. None of this had happened yet. This is 2003 now, so the war starts in 2003. There shouldn't be all this high tech stuff leaking into the police departments yet.
It was a stupid line that I guess they threw in to make it quote unquote timely, but it doesn't work.
I remember back when I used to watch trailers, this trailer would come up, and all of a sudden, it's a Ku Klux Klan rally. And you're thinking, oh, is this going to be like a serious film? Like this is, Mississippi Burning. This is going to be one of these like Oscar kind of films. And then suddenly there's 2 guys in those terrifying Ku Klux Klan robes. And then they open the robes, and who's underneath but 2 African-American cops, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And it's like, the bad boys are back. And it was a fantastic thing for a trailer. And, if you hadn't seen the trailer, it's the same effect because it goes from this ecstasy smuggling to a Klan rally in like rural Florida. And the 2 boys, they break up the Klan rally, but unfortunately their radios are jammed. So basically the 2 of them have to shoot their way out, and not only shoot, but explode their way out.
And Mike shoots Marcus in the butt. And it's like a slow-mo bullet thing. You see the bullet going through the glass, and then they get to make a whole lot of butt jokes. because he got shot in the butt.
That is true, yeah. Plot-wise, the reason why the KKK connect to this film is it turns out that these Klan members were buying some of the ecstasy that we had seen in the opening, but it turns out that they're just low-level guys. They're not really big here. And after Marcus is shot, you get a very, like, Lethal Weapon-ish kind of thing with the Danny Glover character of, like, I'm getting too old for this shit, and Marcus is like, he doesn't want to be partners with Mike anymore, enough of this bad boy stuff. Mike Lowry, Will Smith, he's a very rich guy. He has a trust fund, but Marcus is he's a working class cop guy, and he has what a working class cop could afford. If you want a pool, he has an above the ground pool, and it's this kind of piece of crap. And the dog runs past the pool at one point, his leash gets caught, and the entire above the ground pool explodes. It's pretty funny, and nothing's going right for poor Marcus, and he's all upset.
The funny part of that working class cop guy, though, is that if you recall, Lowry pulls up to his house in his Ferrari, kind of like almost bombs out in the driveway, gets into the house. He opens the giant 2 wood double doors into this huge foyer in this house where the above ground pool sits in the backyard on the canal in Miami.
Right.
I mean, this house, I don't know how many millions this house actually is.
Right.
It's just beautiful scene, a beautiful, like, area. I would love to have that house. They try to make that dynamic, but they want to make it, like, a nice scene. The above ground pool is definitely to put him like down a peg versus Mike Lowry's, millions that he has in the bank.
Right. I mean, this guy should live in an apartment in Miami, or he lives outside of Miami-Dade County in some ranch.
But I don't know why he really needs an above ground pool at all if he's right on the canal. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you want to have clean water. But while they're at the house, Sid is there, Marcus's sister, played by the beautiful Gabrielle Union, and she and Mike are dating. They apparently hooked up in New York, and it's a big secret because, like in the first Bad Boys movie, there had to be a big secret that Mike wasn't really Marcus and Marcus wasn't really Mike. In this movie, the secret is Mike and Sid sitting in a tree, Kissing.
I remember at the time when I saw this film, this having a lot of Friends vibes, because if you remember, when Monica and Chandler started hooking up, there was like a whole season's worth of jokes that basically they had to be very secretive about it, and they didn't want the best friend to find out he was dating the sister, and that stuff. So it is a believable trope. I was fine with this setup, and unbeknownst to the two of them, Sid is not just a regular everyday, I don't know what she said her job was.
They said that she's a DEA paper pusher. So
Okay.
she works in the field of law enforcement, but not really getting into it with the bad guys.
And it turns out that she's actually on a huge undercover case. She's been working for a long time, trying to infiltrate this Russian drug pusher who's in this whole ecstasy deal. He's the Russian who was in Armageddon, who, if you remember, I am Russian hero. So obviously, Michael Bay, Bruckheimer, and the casting directors, they brought this guy back from Armageddon. And when Sid is undercover, she's ambushed by, it's basically a Haitian gang. And there winds up being a huge car chase and a gun chase. And I will say at one point, did you notice at any point that one of the Haitians was blowing what I believe is a shofar? For those who might not know, a shofar is a hollowed out ram's horn, usually used in Jewish ceremonies, but maybe this guy was Jewish. I don't know.
I don't know the specifics of the culture there, but it was like a solid, I'd say like 4-foot horn at least, like curled horn that he like raised and blew to like tell everyone like, hey, time to go. Everyone hopped in their hot rods and went after to basically boost this load of what they thought was either drugs or money.
Yeah, and if you remember last week, one thing that I didn't really like about Bad Boys 1 was that while it's a Michael Bay, Jerry Bruckheimer film, I didn't feel that there was enough Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer in that film. And this one, during a car chase, they are literally throwing cars at each other. There's one point when the bad guys hijack or carjack one of those car carriers, the car transport things that have 12 cars on them, and they start unchaining them and start throwing the cars at them. Later in the film, they're throwing bodies outside of the back of a mortuary truck. I mean, in the boardroom that they were making this film, like, the first film, but times 5. And no, it's times 7.
That's the $110 million difference right away. They amped it up a couple notches. Mike Lowry's car went from a Porsche to a Ferrari.
And the Porsche, actually, they start doing Fast and the Furious type stuff. There's one part where there's a Nissan sedan rolling at them across the causeway, and Marcus just kind of drives straight into it, but it kind of bounces over them. It's ridiculous. It's superhero stuff. And then there's huge explosions, a lot of dead people, and who's back and angrier than ever? Captain Howard, played by everyone's favorite angry guy, Joey Pantoliano. Al, you love to call him what?
Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
I mean, it's not like that's my nickname for him. I mean, to be clear, I didn't invent that, nor am I claiming that I did.
Like when I say Bobby De Niro.
Right. And when Joey Pants is yelling at Mike and Marcus about this whole chase scene, he's like, man, luckily no cops were killed. 3 are in critical condition or something like that. It's like, wait. No cops were killed. You see the Haitian gang members like shooting a lot of cops. It seems like there had to have been massive casualties of cops and civilians, like while they're throwing cars off of this truck. There's no way that nobody died. I refuse to believe
I
that.
want to say maybe no cops died. Maybe some DEA agents died. Maybe. We could be splitting hairs here. But, they're not alluding to any good guys dying in this movie whatsoever.
But there have to be. Like, you cannot cause that much carnage on a parkway, a freeway, I don't know what they call it in Florida. But there had to have been people who just drove into one of those cars that was going, 60 miles an hour, flipping down the road.
There was something recently. One of these cop shootouts, I think it was a UPS truck, was just hijacked, and the cops shot out the UPS truck and they killed the bad guys, but they also killed like some lady in a minivan next to it and the hostage
and the UPS driver.
And the hostage. Yeah, I mean, this stuff happened. So, usually I kind of might roll my eye and go, Al, this is Jerry Bruckheimer. But you're right. And like this stuff, it does happen. It could even be like the captain going, they sent 12 people to the hospital. They don't have to kill them, but they could say, you sent these people to the hospital and it caused like, $2 million of damage.
3 was too low a number in terms of who was really hurt in the hospital. It should have been higher. But in the whole movie, I think if we go back and look at it and examine it, I don't think any cop or any good guy actually is shown as dying.
Right. I do want to get back to like the Haitian gang members, because these guys are like really serious. They are very well equipped. They have like tons of guns. When Mike and Marcus eventually like track down their leader, who's like the guy with the blonde dreads.
In the pink house.
Yeah, in the pink house. They know to go there because their informant tells them, oh, that's where the guy with the blonde dreads lives. They go into the house. They start shooting up the place. They kill all of these guys. At no point do they ever identify that they're police. The only reason they have to go into this house is because an informant said the guy with the blonde hair lives there. Like, no warrant or anything. It's like, these people maybe were just scared because people they didn't know came into their house and started shooting, and they shot back.
They do identify themselves in the middle of the shooting.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, in the middle of the shooting, I remember this scene. Mike Lowry standing in the middle where they're shooting from both sides from behind the wall behind him. And he's standing there, arms crossed, guns down, and he tells his partner Marcus, all right, why don't you tell them to put their guns down. Or I forget the exact wording of the scene, but he says, all right, you talk to them. Marcus says, hey, whatever it is, put down your guns or whatever the case may be. And then Mike Lowry says again, they can't freaking hear you because they're shooting at you. Shoot them.
I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not going to check the videotape right now, but I don't think they ever say cops. I do remember what you're talking about. He says, like, just tell them to put the guns down, but it's not because we're cops.
Are you going to check the videotape later, Al?
Yeah, I will. I said last week that these bad boys are bad cops. I really feel like this is really just breaking like every rule of police engagement here.
Well, when it's all said and done, they recover a camcorder, like an early 2000s camcorder. But an early 2000s camcorder, they all have little viewfinders on them. But I guess this one's broken for some reason.
It's shot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and they go into like a Best Buy.
Circuit City, maybe?
No, it was an
family
independent
owned.
one. It was a family owned one.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you hook it up to every single TV in the whole place, and there's some sex stuff, and so, it's a family place, so it's hide your eyes. And then the camcorder's still kind of hooked up, and it turns out that it's like live video. So the entire store is still watching the two of them, and they're kind of having what can be interpreted as either two best friends talking or two gay lovers talking to each other. That's basically the joke here. And there's a very dated joke that there's this lady that goes to them and just says, "You two need Jesus." And essentially saying that if you're gay, you're going to hell. And that's an outdated joke. Whereas they could have gone somewhere else with this joke.
I mean, the whole thing's just a gay joke, and the whole thing with getting shot in the butt is the setup for it of like, I'm really sorry about what I did to your butt the other night. You really hurt me.
From that time, that was just the norm, basically. All the gay jokes and pointing to it, and we can judge it now.
And we can even make a podcast where we take movies from a bygone era, watch them today, and see if they stand the query of the timeline.
No, it was the query of longevity.
That's it. The query.
Query
that
of
was
longevity?
That was what our friend Darren said that his rival podcast was going to be called. He sent that text, and I literally laughed out loud. I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. But speaking of like outdated and kind of cliche, easy jokes, there's another scene where Marcus's daughter is going on her first date, and because she's a girl and he's a dad, they do the cliche thing where the dad is really angry and scary with the boy who's showing up at the doorstep, and then Marcus and Mike are not getting along for this whole movie, and they're fighting, and Marcus is doing his like trying to be calm and is staying centered, and he keeps saying woosah for whatever reason. But in this scene, they really bond again over the fact that they scare the crap out of this, 14-year-old boy who is just showing up for a date.
15-year-old boy.
Oh, I'm sorry. 15. Reggie, right. Earlier, James, when you were talking about Will Smith's albums, he didn't curse. That was like his whole thing in his music. He didn't say curse words, and he never said the N-word in his music.
Like Eminem. Will Smith doesn't have to curse in his music. I do.
So fuck you and fuck him too. But in both of these movies, and other movies too, he curses a lot. But like this scene, he's dropping the N-word like every other word. It just kind of stuck out at me because of like that Eminem lyric of like, oh, Will Smith doesn't do that in his albums. But in Bad Boys 2, he absolutely will.
Oh, he's a bad boy.
I mean, that is fair. Just out of curiosity, have either of you guys ever dealt with that? Like picking up a girl for a date and like dad tried to scare the crap out of you?
In my experience, that cliche never happened because I didn't show up to anyone's house with like a feather earring hanging out of my nose, which is what in every movie it would be.
An earring out of your nose?
That's what I'm saying. That's what the premise would be. The guy shows up in the van that like has a hole in it, and with metal music coming down the road. No, I always showed up. If I had to meet the father, I was of course going to be nice, and he was, nice enough to me.
Aaron,
I don't think I ever met any fathers.
Well, I mean, your wife's father you've met, I assume.
Yeah, but in terms of dating, I don't recall actually going and meeting him at the house or at the door or anything like that.
I will say I remember when I first met a girlfriend's dad, someone I was dating in college.
You had girlfriends before Courtney?
Shh. She won't listen to it anyway. It's fine. But
yeah, tell us all the deets.
Well, I will tell you that when I met her dad, he scared the crap out of me, but not by doing any of this Bad Boys 2 shit. We went out to dinner and he spent the entire meal staring at me. Like he didn't say a word. To me, that's more intimidating to not say anything than to scream curses.
Did he like open up his jacket and show you his gun?
No, that did not happen.
There's another scene when it's the classic police thing when they're chasing bad guys and they have to commandeer a car. It's like a Yugo. Do you know who's driving that car?
Oh no, who?
I know.
Who is it, Al?
Is it the like Pizza Hut guy?
No, it's Michael Bay.
It's the director. Yeah.
Shit, that is him.
Yeah, it's Michael Bay, and then it's of course a piece of crap, which I felt like this joke, do you know what joke I felt like this was stealing from? A late 90s film, which almost the exact same thing happens. Die Hard with a Vengeance. They steal literally a Yugo. And then, remember they leave the gold bar in the back seat? And then this one, so they basically decide to commandeer a second vehicle, and this guy, who's had 2 huge cameos in Miami-based films, this is the second of his huge cameos, Miami quarterback legend, Al.
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino.
So they commandeer his, it's like a Mercedes or something.
And what was the first cameo?
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
That's right. So basically Marcus and Mike, they've found out that Tapia, the drug dealer, he's working through the mortuaries to hide drugs in dead bodies. They do a lot of infiltrating with disguises in this film. So they decide to dress as ambulance drivers. And they're not supposed to touch anything.
Right, because they don't have a warrant. They kind of glaze over like the details of it. It's something like some judge said we can go in and look. We can't touch anything, but if we see something, then we'll get a warrant. But they touch everything. They're literally sticking their hands into the corpses. They are clearly looking around, and they do make a point to say that Tapia has sued the city of Miami anytime he's been arrested and won repeatedly. It seems like they're giving him a case here.
They're bad cops.
Yeah, they searched his business without probable cause, without a warrant. I mean, this is really, really shoddy police work yet again.
And I'll say in this scene, there's a corpse, and it's the corpse of a presumably young and beautiful woman with very large breasts. So at one point, the bad guys are coming back in, and they're both like, hide! You know, the bad guys are coming. So Will Smith hides in a closet or something, and Martin Lawrence's character, Marcus, he decides to pull over a drape, and basically there's just a bunch of cadavers on the mortuary table, and he's lying down like next to this cold corpse with these huge, presumably fake breasts, because she is like 90 pounds and she has like, you know, G breasts. It was funny because Martin Lawrence plays it well, that he's uncomfortable. You know, they're about to be killed, and you have to be quiet, but he wastes time to go, don't tell my wife about this, which is so lame a line, but like, shut up. Like, don't say anything. I did smile at it because Martin Lawrence is charming in this scene.
Now that I'm thinking about it, was that purely all plastic and synthetic? Or was that some actress lying there on a slab?
Oh, it's almost definitely an actress lying on a slab.
How do you get that job?
I mean, if you spend a couple minutes with Michael Bay and he will offer you that job.
A beautiful woman in a Michael Bay film?
Yeah.
I can't think of another incidence of nudity in any Michael Bay film. Not Armageddon, none of the Transformers films, The Rock has none, maybe Pain and Gain, but I don't remember.
I don't know, but I would not call myself an expert.
This might be the only one. But Marcus, he has a headache because he's very anxious and this is too much shit for him.
Yeah, so he goes to drink some water because he's been throwing up because he saw all the stuff that, you know, Mike Lowry's pulling from the dead bodies. The guy's head falls off that he's looking at. Exposes the brain, and he's puking left and right in that sink behind him. Goes to take a cup of water, drinks some water. After 2 tabs of ecstasy, fly over, fall in the cup, and he drinks it, and then they move on, and he hides. They finally get out of there, and then he cut to the next scene where they go to whose house?
Joey Pants's house. Again, this is like, I hate this phrase because it's a cliche, but it's just low-hanging fruit. The obvious joke of like, all right, we need to be really serious in front of our boss, but I just took 2 tabs of ecstasy. Uh-oh. I mean, it's not particularly funny. I mean, Martin Lawrence is a funny actor, and he's doing all of the goofy things you would expect him to do while pretending to be high on ecstasy. I didn't find the scene particularly funny.
I just like the fact that they actually start showing them things on a digital camera, because I thought when they were taking pictures or anything, it was on like a disposable or something. So I realized that at least this was back into this century of technology.
I mean, literally, it's a 2003 movie, so yeah.
Well, basically, it's been about 5 minutes since there's been a huge gunfight. So there's a huge gunfight. And basically, this results in Sid, Gabrielle Union, she's now kidnapped. You know, in the first Bad Boys, they really only did like a 180 shot of this. But in this film, they do the full, like, this is like the 360. This is the famous Michael Bay, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence shot where the camera just goes all the way around them. Now they realize there's no more joking around here. My sister and your girlfriend is now kidnapped. And what do they realize? What does Mike Lowry say so that both Mike and Marcus and the audience know that it's serious?
Shit just got real?
This shit just got real. Gunfights that was fake. That was nothing. Bodies being thrown at you, that was nothing. Explosions everywhere, nothing. Ku Klux Klan rallies where you're almost exploded by a bunch of white supremacists who would want nothing more than to kill you. Now it's real.
I do not really understand what happens next. So basically, Tapia takes Sid to Cuba, and it's like a whole political thing about how you can get into Cuba and extradite from Cuba, and it's, you know, the America-Cuban relations are tense or whatever, which I understand all of that. But then Marcus and Mike are like, we got to go get her. And then all these other cops and DEA agents are all like, hey, we're all going to sneak into Cuba with you. But it seems to be like an official thing, and like all of the bosses are in on it, and Joey Pants is helping them. And it doesn't seem to be like a covert sneaking in the middle of the night, Bay of Pigs style thing. They're all just like, oh, well, we're not allowed to go to Cuba, but let's all go to Cuba. And then they're like, the only way in is that Tapia's got like a secret escape route from his compound, but we're going to tunnel in. You know, that's how we'll get in. But it looks like this tunnel has already been built. Like, when did they build this tunnel? It's like a very intricate tunnel with like the wiring and the mesh and everything. Did they just do that like in a day or two?
Yeah, I think apparently his cousin Tito in Cuba is able to start on the tunnel before they've left for Cuba. And since Cuba is only maybe an hour away by helicopter, something really, really short, apparently.
Yeah.
It's done already. I'd say they're very proficient there in their tunnel digging.
Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that. I also did just want to say that when you see Tapia's compound, did that at all make you guys think of MTV's Cribs?
I mean, it's your typical drug dealer's crib. That's what it made me think of.
Right, but I just mean like in terms of the way it's shot, you know, like the camera angles and like the zooms and everything. I was like, they're just doing an episode of Cribs.
Well, Michael Bay, as we said last time, he's a music video director.
Right.
And there's something earlier that Tapia does that it's a trope of bad guys that I mean, it's meant to show how badass they are, but it's when a bad guy kills one of his own henchmen because they failed him. I believe Tapia kills his own cousin.
His nephew. And then there's this like sweet looking grandma that comes out. And Tapia's like, oh no, Mom, it's so sad. Our nephew, he got really sad and he killed himself. And the funny thing is that Tapia is like drenched in his nephew's blood. And holding the gun.
Holding the gun.
Holding the gun.
and then the grandma, you know, she just goes, okay, you're at first wondering, like, is this grandma stupid? But no, because now that we're at this huge Miami raid, there's a part where now she takes out, like, a shotgun. And then one of the Miami cops that was from the first film, he's like, sorry to have to do this, mama. And he basically punches her in the face.
Yeah, he knocks her down with his own weapon or something.
Right.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting, like, switch from your grandma that's making you your sauce and your soup or whatever at home, and then she turns around and turns out with the shotgun and tries to shoot you.
I thought that scene was funny.
The Cuban military shows up to stop these guys from escaping with Tapia's hostage, I guess, because they're all in on it. And good guys, bad guys, explosions, fire, everything. The beautiful mansion gets blown up. It gets destroyed.
How does it get blown up? I didn't quite get it. Like, was it wired to blow up? Was there a propane boiler?
Once again, no one actually dies. The one guy who's in the middle of the house gets shot. After he gets shot, he's still able to pull the cord on this one package of, I guess, C4. Pulls the detonator, it's smoking, so it's the timer that's going on, chemical timer of some kind, and then they go into the tunnels to escape, and then the whole house explodes.
So, true fact, do either of you guys actually know how much explosive, like a brick, like one of those red bricks that builds a house, a brick full of C4, do you know how much explosive power that is?
Honestly, 100% no.
Okay, so
No.
one brick of C4, the amount of explosive power it can do is exactly what is needed for the plot. That's actually
Scientific fact.
I mean, do you notice this? Like, they put a wad on the safe door. It perfectly just blows up the safe door. It's very, very confusing. And this one blows up the entire compound, but doesn't leave a huge crater on the ground. I never quite get what the power of C4 is.
The other part of all this is no one realizes it's not necessarily an explosive, incendiary device that would make an explosion like that. Like in Bad Boys 1, when the hangar explodes from all the fuel, it's not only fuel, it's also all the vapors and all the gas that actually makes an explosion like that. To see a house blow up like that out of C4, it's unrealistic, I think.
They could have had a gas leak at some point.
Oh, gas leak, for sure.
Fight in the laundry room.
We're the propane tanks, right?
Right, something like that. But so there's a huge explosion. There's a huge car chase scene through Cuba. And right now, remember, they're in communist Cuba. So they're being chased. They've now rescued Sid,
the Gabrielle Union.
And they have no way to get out. So they're racing to Guantanamo Bay.
In what kind of car?
I don't know. A Ferrari? Oh, what was it? No.
A Hummer.
Bright yellow Hummer H2.
Aren't usually Cuban cars all 1950s American cars?
He's got a Hummer H2 in Cuba.
Well, they made those in Detroit in the 40s. So there's this car chase, and then according to this film, this place has a beautiful white sand moat around the Guantanamo Bay, full of mines. Now, I would imagine you only need all these mines if you're under direct imminent threat. Can't you just have 100 Americans, Marines pointing guns? Mines? This seems very
I feel like the mines
unlikely.
might be unrealistic. It's probably more likely a fence with cameras and some kind of sensors. I doubt there are minefields
Absolutely
surrounding
not.
Guantanamo and Cuba.
But it's a great place for a finale, for the
Nice.
finale with a bad guy. So the car crashes there, something's exploded. We now know that this is serious. Some random henchman has stepped on a mine and he's exploded. But the situation is now that Tapia is holding a gun to Will Smith's head, and Marcus doesn't know what to do.
I really like that, once again, they traded places right there. It's constant throughout the whole movie and throughout the series, right? That they kind of trade places. Who's the better driver? Who's the more suave guy? But here, Sid tosses the gun, throws it at a mine. The mine comes up, explodes, kills the other guy next to them, holding the weapon on them. Tapia is just, shaking about for a second. And then Marcus shoots him right between the eyes, right in the forehead.
And you think that's the end of him because he just got a bullet through, right between the eyes, which is a great shot. But then Tapia falls back and he falls on a mine about a foot away from Will Smith. But Tapia's entire body explodes like a sack of Kool-Aid bursting. It was incredibly bloody, but Will Smith standing 1 foot away is totally unfazed. And he says a line which is exactly a callback from the first film. In the first film, when Martin Lawrence successfully drives through that blast wall, he goes, "Now that's how you drive. From now on, that's how I want you to drive." And this time he goes, "Now that's shooting. From now on, that's how I want you to shoot." So it was, call back to the first film.
But this time, Marcus is the hero.
Well, the last time, Marcus, he's the one who was driving. But you're right. Mike gets the final kill shot in the first film.
Right.
Whereas Marcus gets the kill shot in this one. And so now everyone's happy. Mike and Sid are back together. The bad boys have, they're brothers again. And now we got the final scene, which is just a little epilogue of actually, no, the credits roll here. The credits go on the side of the screen and you see a little scene, and it's the two of them relaxing in the pool. The above ground pool has now been repaired.
No, it's a new pool.
A new one.
That they say that Mike bought for Marcus because he's nice and rich and he wanted to do something for his buddy, his partner, whatever. Mm-hmm. But once again, the dog runs by and the entire pool collapses. Now, I have an above ground pool and a dog, and I've had other dogs. A dog running by this thing is not going to knock it over unless you've done a terrible job of assembling it. I mean, Aaron, I suck at assembling things, but I think even I can do a better job with an above ground pool than these guys.
Yeah, your dog's not that big, Al.
Is the dog that big in this movie?
It's pretty big.
That could knock over a pool filled with water? I mean, those things are heavy.
Inch thick, chain around its neck and 12 feet behind it that it's running around through the pool filters and ripping all the pipes off with.
But twice, I feel like perfect storm, it could happen once. But did he buy the same? It looks like he bought the same pool.
Yeah, it's probably the same pool.
It's probably the same poorly designed pool. Not only do they fall out in their floats out of the pool, but they float into the canal, the bay. And the two of them, they're actually not that upset. They just kind of goes into the credits with them just singing.
Well, the joke is that they're singing Bad Boys, but they only know the words that everyone knows, and no one knows any of the other words,
right.
Which I don't.
Of course not.
Do you guys?
No idea.
So, Aaron, Bad Boys 2, the movie that you constantly had on at your apartment. Do you think that it stands the test of time?
You know what? I think since they improved the technology, people have cell phones, they've got a Ferrari they can still buy today. Everything I think really does stand the test of time for how realistic it is in terms of a cop movie. Is it realistic in real life or something like that, where nobody gets hurt, nobody dies, and every single car chase and gunfight and explosion? No. But the movie stands the test of time for me for a likable action flick that I'm happy to watch if it's ever on USA or TBS every day.
Okay. James, your thoughts?
This film is just everything that worked in the first film, they doubled or they quintupled. 7 times, actually, was the budget. And the things that didn't work in the first film, this stupid side story of mistaken identity. While things were funny in this film, they got rid of too much of that. And I think to its credit, this film knows what it is. And this is a Michael Bay film. And unlike last week, where if you want a Michael Bay explosion film, I think you're going to be disappointed by Bad Boys 1. This film is beautifully shot. It's a Miami, bright colors. It's a good soundtrack. It's an early aughts, hip hop soundtrack with a lot of songs that were popular at the time. Michael Bay, he did a better job here. And so I'm going to say yes, this film does stand the test of time. Al, what do you think? I assume this is the first time you saw this film. You didn't mention yet.
Yeah, no, I had only ever seen bits and pieces of it at your apartment, Aaron. But I had never sat down and watched the entire movie start to finish. I did just want to say, you were talking about the music. Did you see in the credits that P. Diddy was an executive soundtrack consultant or something? I'm definitely getting that title wrong. Dr. Dre composed some music too.
Yeah. I vaguely remember Bad Boys 2 being one of the last soundtracks that was pretty big. I think that summer it was a big one.
So yeah, music's fine. But no, this is another shitty Michael Bay movie that sucks ass like every other fucking Michael Bay movie. And I hate it. And of course I hate it because it's stupid garbage. And, I suggested that we review these two movies. So I can't blame you, James, for picking bad movies. I wanted to have you on the show, Aaron, and I'm glad that we got to spend this time talking about it because it's always good to see you and to hang out and to bullshit about movies. But no, I mean, Michael Bay only makes garbage movies. I just felt like it's all stupid shit in this movie where, okay, fine, there's more explosions and less of the mistaken identity than there was in Bad Boys 1. But there's still the whole thing about, oh, we can't tell him that I'm going out with his sister. That goes on way too long. And the joke about the drugs and remember when I hurt your butt the other night? Yeah, I get it. Okay. I mean, why don't you do like a 45-minute plot point about how airplane food is bad? This is just so basic stuff and it's not funny. And I guess the explosions are explosion-y, but it's not enough for me. I'm sorry. It's just not. No, this movie does not stand the test of time. I don't believe I have ever seen a Michael Bay movie that I have enjoyed. You and I got into a fight when we saw Pearl Harbor in the theater. We almost came to blows because I was so mad at you that you made us spend our money to see that garbage.
I think maybe you're giving it a little bit more of a critique than you would other films that aren't really going for more than just explosions. This movie is about, cops, cars, guns, explosions, hot women, be it in the opening credits or the leading actress in it. You may be looking for too much, but that's your opinion.
I don't think I'm looking for much. I think I'm just looking for like coherence and some semblance of a plot, some semblance of comedy. And hell, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, those guys are funny. They have good chemistry, but I do not find them funny together in this movie.
I wonder if you're going to like Michael Bay's next film, Robopocalypse.
No. He didn't direct that one that's on Netflix now, right?
Ryan Reynolds.
6 Underground.
6 Underground. Yeah,
I watched it.
Yeah, he directed that.
He did direct it?
Yeah, he did.
Is that hot garbage too?
You're not gonna like it just based on how you review Michael Bay movies now. You're not gonna like it.
No, but now that I watch Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 on Netflix thinks I like it, so they're just gonna keep showing me the trailer over and over again. Are you gonna go see Bad Boys for Life, Aaron?
I would like to. Are you coming?
Absolutely not.
Well, his question would be, are you paying?
Oh, I'm definitely paying for my ticket.
You're not just going to sneak into the theater?
I mean, if you were paying for my ticket, I still don't think I would go.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I have no interest in giving Michael Bay any more money. If you're listening, Michael, sorry, maybe you can come on the podcast and defend your work, but all of your movies are terrible and you're terrible, and please stop making movies. But that's it for us this week. Come back next week with special guest Samantha Noah. That's my sister. She's coming on to talk about Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. And our thanks to our guest. This is your second visit. I hope you had a good time here, Aaron. And I hope you can come back soon.
I hope we can review Bad Boys for Life in the future.
Well, we have a 15-year rule, so we'd have to wait 15 years to do it. I mean, if you're free in 2035, I'll send a Google Calendar invite and we can, put it in the books. And this one isn't directed by Michael Bay, so maybe I won't hate it. No, I'm still totally gonna hate it.
We could actually do it the week after we review Rise of Skywalker. We could.
We could indeed. But yeah, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us. And come back anytime.
Thanks for having me, guys.
In the meantime, everyone, you know the deal. At Test of Time Pod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. TestofTimePod.com is the website. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.